The Oscars had a face-off between a big-budget spectacle about fighter pilots and their personal lives versus a smaller-budgeted but visually inventive film about love, fate, and the immigrant experience. I could be talking about the 95th Oscars, but I'm actually talking about the very first Academy Awards held in 1929. That face-off was between Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans, and Wings. No, not that Wings. Steven Weber hadn't been born yet. You might remember Wings because it had a burst of notoriety when Rian Johnson decided to pay homage to the film in The Last Jedi. Both Wings and Sunrise are great films, although if you've never seen a silent movie, I wouldn't recommend starting with a 2.5-hour World War I epic, or a melodrama about infidelity and murder. Start with something more lighthearted and less political, like a Charlie Chaplin movie. But I'm less interested in the films themselves than the way the Motion Picture Academy reacted to them. If you walk into the Dolby Theater, where the Academy Awards have been held since 2002, you'll see a list of every Best Picture winner throughout Oscar history, except it's not actually true. In 1929, the Academy gave away 2 Best Picture awards, Outstanding Picture and Unique and Artistic Picture. They were both meant to be the top award of the night, honoring different but equally important aspects of film. Wings was of a scale and scope that few films had ever accomplished up until that point. It was certainly one of the most expensive movies ever made. The fact that it was made at all was worthy of an Oscar. They weren't called Oscars yet, but I'm not going to keep saying Academy Award over and over again. On the other hand, Sunrise was a truly unique and artistic picture, innovative in its use of tracking shots and creative intertitles. At the second Academy Awards, and every Oscar ceremony since, the Academy dropped the Unique and Artistic Picture Award. They've since retroactively decided that Wings is the true Best Picture winner of 1927 and 1928. If you're wondering why The Jazz Singer isn't part of this conversation about technical achievements in films from 1927,
you ain't heard nothing yet.
That's because the Academy believed that synchronized sound was such an innovation that the film was sui generis, and it was unfair for it to compete in either of the top categories. For those of you playing pretentious cinephile bingo at home, that's the second unnecessary foreign word or phrase I've used this video.
Goodbye.
Don't think that splitting the Best Picture award in 2 was meant to distinguish art from commerce. Yes, Wings was the top grossing film of the year, but this wasn't the Academy's ham-fisted attempt at increasing viewership through the Best Popular Film award. It's about crafting the production versus the artistic merit of the final product. Wings was a massive undertaking, filmed over the course of 9 months on location in San Antonio for $2 million. Back when $2 million was one of the most expensive movies ever made, and not just half a Blumhouse flick. At one point, the budget was so out of control that the studio sent a representative to rein in director William A. Wellman, who responded that the executive had 2 options, a trip home or a trip to the hospital. They had to amass an army for some scenes, literally. The Air Force wouldn't become a separate military branch for 2 decades. Over 300 pilots worked on filming the aerial battle scenes. On the ground, the cast had a lot of time on their hands between setups. Too much time. Gary Cooper had an affair with Clara Bow, who was engaged to Victor Fleming at the time. Fleming later directed The Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind, but before this production, he was given undeserved credit for inventing the running on the ceiling trick for Douglas Fairbanks, which is a crazy story that I covered in another video, but still not as crazy as the production of Wings, about which the director said, "San Antonio became the Armageddon of a magnificent sexual Donnybrook." He recalled that by the time they left the St. Anthony Hotel after 9 months, all of the elevator girls were pregnant. In other words, good or bad, simply completing the movie was an accomplishment. The fact that it was not only coherent, but crowd-pleasing entertainment definitely deserves recognition. Don't forget, up until 1950, the Best Picture award was given to the studio, accepted by whatever executive or vice president that the head of the studio chose. Since then, producers have collected the Best Picture Oscar. The Academy obviously recognizes the challenge of bringing an entire film together. Sunrise, on the other hand, had very little drama behind the scenes, but its artistic innovations have affected cinema ever since. Director F.W. Murnau, probably most famous for Nosferatu and The Last Laugh, brought German Expressionism to America. Forced perspective, tracking shots, chiaroscuro lighting, all externalize the characters' internal worlds via the mise-en-scène, mixing the objective with the subjective. Quick fun fact, Dutch angle is actually an Americanization or bastardization of Deutsch or German angle. Sunrise influenced everyone from Orson Welles to John Ford to Alfred Hitchcock.
Hitch chose Funeral March of a Marionette as the theme for his TV show because he liked the effect it had the first time he heard it in Sunrise.
It's considered one of the best movies of all time, appearing on both AFI's Top 100 and Sight and Sound's Greatest Films polls. And so, in 1929, rather than pitting these two excellent yet very different films against each other, the Academy of Motion Pictures decided to award two Best Pictures, as it were. And never again.
If you liked this video, hit the like button. If you want to see more videos like this, hit the subscribe button. And if you want your friends to know what great taste you have in video essays, hit the share button.
This sort of big versus unique picture fight pops up regularly in Oscar history. In the 50s and 60s, even into the 70s, the big studio production usually won. Greatest Show on Earth over High Noon, Bridge on the River Kwai over 12 Angry Men, Lawrence of Arabia over To Kill a Mockingbird, Patton over Five Easy Pieces. In the mid-70s, the Best Picture winner tended to be both cinematically unique and a big success at the box office. The French Connection, The Godfather, The Sting, Rocky, these were all artistic achievements and huge hits. But there were still years when two awards could have been merited. Specifically, 1977, when Annie Hall beat Star Wars. I mean, there's that scene where Woody Allen pulls Marshall McLuhan out from behind a movie poster.
Let me come over here a second.
Oh,
Tell him.
I heard what you were saying. You know nothing of my work. You mean my whole fallacy is wrong. How you ever got to teach a course in anything is totally amazing.
Boy, if life were only like this.
But come on, George Lucas changed the way movies are made. The 80s and early 90s were dominated again by period pieces like Gandhi, Amadeus, and The Last Emperor, and epic films like Dances with Wolves, Braveheart, and Titanic. And then in 1999, Shakespeare in Love beat Saving Private Ryan. If ever there was a justification for two Best Pictures, it was the 71st Academy Awards. Spielberg basically restaged the storming of Normandy in the most brutal and realistic way ever depicted on film. Meanwhile, Tom Stoppard had the balls to rewrite Shakespeare and somehow pulled it off. Since then, only two Best Picture winners have been in the year's top 10 at the box office: Gladiator and Lord of the Rings: Return of the King. Although most people predict an exception at the 96th Oscars, that will only prove the rule. For 2 decades, large-scale studio pictures haven't won the big prize. After Dark Knight was shut out of even being nominated for Best Picture, the Academy expanded the number of possible nominees from 5 to 10. So a lot of big movies have been up for Best Picture, but still, none have won, which is a shame for audiences and an embarrassment for the Academy. Can we honestly say in 2018, Green Book was a more significant cinematic achievement than Avengers: Infinity War? A movie that accomplished a feat that had never even been attempted before by bringing together a decade's worth of movies in a fun and comprehensive way. Or before that, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2 capped off an 8-film series in a way that will continue to entertain children for generations, as opposed to The Artist, which is pretty much only remembered as the answer to the trivia question, what's the other silent film to win Best Picture besides Wings? In the last few years, honestly, which have you rewatched more? Rogue One or Moonlight? Mad Max Fury Road or Spotlight?
No.
Yes, I'm sure some people lean toward the latter films, but consider the possibility that that's recency bias. Look back to 1981 and compare Raiders of the Lost Ark with that year's Best Picture winner. I'll give you a second to try and guess the title.
Now let me ask you. Have you seen this?
Basically, nobody remembers this movie, other than the theme song, which is admittedly great.
Such a great score by Vangelis. He took electronic scores to a new level. It was groundbreaking.
And just to demonstrate that two Best Pictures won't only benefit large films, it works the other way around too. In 1994, Forrest Gump won Best Picture for being a self-congratulatory ode to baby boomers, beating out Pulp Fiction.
I think this is probably the only award I'm going to win here tonight.
Had there been two Best Pictures, surely Gump would have earned Best Production, while Pulp Fiction would have been awarded Artistic Merit. I think it's fairly obvious which of those had the greater long-term impact on film history.
5 long years he wore this watch. Up his ass.
The tastes of the general public and the Academy voters have diverged slowly over the last couple of decades. I'm not suggesting that they always have to align, but as you look back at the films that the Academy of Motion Pictures has declared the best, The list of what Andrew Klavan calls pretty but essentially empty films tackling problems from the 1960s grows longer and longer.
Some of the movies I've mentioned might not be your cup of tea. That's fine. Some of them aren't mine either. I'm not going to tell you which because that's not the point. The point is that whether we enjoy a movie or not is a separate question from whether we can admire the immense effort to produce a grand-scale film. There are a lot of below-the-line prizes that honor various technical skills, but an award that honors the overall craft of an entire production, of bringing something to the big screen that deserves a big screen, would rescue the Academy from its current slump of cultural irrelevance.
The Academy should have never backed off and buried its dual Best Picture win back in 1929. Instead, they should celebrate it and return to that idea. A Best Production Award, alongside a Unique and Artistic Achievement Award, would help both the filmmakers of the Academy and the audience at home appreciate the true scope of the possibilities of cinema.
If you've ever wondered what it's like to attend the Oscars, check out my interview with animator Tim Reckert. Or, if you're curious about the silent era, watch this video about the history of actors running on walls and dancing on the ceiling. You can find a list of sources and movies used in this video on my Substack, linked in the description below. You can also support this channel by becoming a paid subscriber on Substack. Thanks for watching.